I'd been wearing that stiff Domino's polo for 6 hours, and every minute of it clung to my skin like someone else's sweat. It smelled like old cheese and fryer oil, no matter how many times I tugged the collar away from my neck. The logo patch above my heart was already peeling at the corners, like it knew I didn't belong here yet. I kept telling myself it was fine. Just another part-time job to get me through the end of summer until I could figure out something better. I didn't have a car yet, so my mom's cousin, Dave, stuck his neck out to vouch for me. Said I was responsible, good with late nights. I didn't tell him how I almost fell asleep standing up half the time. He didn't need to know that. Nobody wanted the closing shifts here anyway. The strip mall was half dead, wedged between an abandoned video rental store and a vape shop that never seemed open. The neon open sign buzzed like an insect above the glass door. I'd seen a couple drunks weaving through the parking lot earlier, one of them shouting at a plastic bag caught on the dumpster fence. When the manager asked if I was okay being alone my first night, I told him I'd be fine. I lied through my teeth. The first few hours were easy enough. I folded boxes until my wrists hurt, wiped down sauce crust from the prep table, and tried not to breathe too deep near the mop bucket. My trainer, Zach, was older than me by maybe 2 years, but he acted like he'd been running the place for a decade. He showed me how to portion cheese, how to tap the oven door twice so the old latch didn't stick, and how to listen for the timer beep over the hum of the freezers. When it was almost 9, he clapped me on the shoulder so hard I nearly dropped the sauce tub I was holding. He smelled like stale cologne and pizza grease. "You'll be good," he said, already shrugging into his hoodie. "Just remember, don't forget to scrub the dough bins before you lock up." He didn't say anything about drunks at the dumpster. He didn't say anything about the hum that made the light above the sink flicker. He definitely didn't say anything about what I'd find when I went looking for more sanitizer. It was stupid, really. I was just trying to be thorough. I cracked open the supply closet, half expecting a fresh bottle of sanitizer to be right there on the shelf. Instead, all I saw were leaning stacks of old promo flyers, the kind with smiling kids and cartoon pepperoni slices. I pushed the stack aside and saw it. A black notebook wedged in the back corner like someone had stuffed it there in a hurry. The cover was cracked and flaking. There was something dried around the edges, dark red and crusted like old sauce that never got wiped off. I should have shut the door right then. I wish I could say I did. Instead, I reached in, fingers brushing sticky cardboard, and pulled it free. It felt heavy. Warm, maybe, or maybe that was just the heat from the pizza oven seeping through the kitchen walls. I flipped it open right there in the closet, squinting at the first page under the buzzing overhead bulb. Someone had written in block letters so big they filled the page, "The 7 Rules of the Burnt Offering." I laughed under my breath. I thought maybe Zach left it behind to mess with the new kid. Or maybe someone before him did. It smelled faintly of old oil and burned dough, like the entire store did. I wish I'd left it wedged behind those flyers. God, I wish I had. I tucked it under my arm, grabbed the last bottle of sanitizer I could find, and stepped back into the kitchen. The open sign still buzzed above the front window. The oven hummed behind me, low and steady, sending waves of warmth across my shoulders. My trainer's footsteps were long gone, the back door's lock clicking into place behind him an hour ago. I was alone now. Alone except for the flicker of shadows near the sinks and the soft, warm weight of that notebook under my elbow. I told myself it was probably nothing. Just dumb prank rules scribbled down by some bored teen who hated the smell of garlic butter as much as I did. I told myself that even as I cracked the notebook open on the prep table and read the first rule under that flickering fluorescent light. Rule 1. Burn 1 pizza every night. I remember thinking it couldn't hurt. But even then, something inside my chest tightened, like it already knew I'd just agreed to something I didn't understand. I stood there for a long minute, just staring at the first rule. The notebook sat open on the prep table, right next to a stack of clean boxes and the dull metal pizza paddle. The heat from the oven pressed into my back like someone leaning over my shoulder to read along. I rubbed my thumb over the page. The paper felt greasy, soft at the edges. Whoever wrote these rules hadn't exactly been careful. There were smudges of sauce, dark fingerprints, maybe even ashes ground into the crease where the notebook barely held together. I flipped to the next page. The words were all in the same blocky handwriting, each letter pressed in so deep the paper was dented on the other side. Rule 1. Burn 1 pizza every night. Rule 2. Never feed the knocker. I snorted under my breath, trying to push down the weird chill that crept under my collar. The knocker, I said out loud, just to hear my own voice. It didn't help. I turned the page. Rule 3. Keep the supply closet door closed at all times. I glanced over my shoulder. The closet door was still cracked open from when I grabbed the sanitizer. I crossed the kitchen and pushed it shut with the tip of my shoe. It clicked shut so softly it made the hairs on my arms stand up. I turned back to the notebook. Rule 4. Beware of the echo order. No explanation. No note about what an echo order was, just that one line, tucked right above a fresh smear of something dark. I squinted at it, then decided I didn't want to know. The overhead light above the sink buzzed so loud I half expected it to pop. The shadows in the corners of the store seemed to shift with every flicker, like the racks and stacks of boxes were breathing in the heat. I kept reading. Rule 5. Sweep every crumb before midnight. That one almost made sense. Zach did say the dough bins had to be spotless. Maybe whoever wrote this was just obsessed with crumbs. I'd worked enough fast food gigs to know some managers cared more about crumbs than people. Rule 6. Never answer the phone after the burn. I paused at that one. The burn. My eyes drifted back to Rule 1. Burn a pizza. So was that what they meant? Burn it, then never pick up the phone after? My mouth felt dry. I shifted from one foot to the other, trying not to imagine what would happen if I did pick up. The last rule was written in thicker ink. Someone had pressed the pen so hard it tore a tiny hole at the top of the page. Rule 7. Never stay alone past midnight. I closed the notebook for a second, pressing the cover flat against my palm. My thumb brushed that crusty edge again. It flaked off onto the prep table, leaving a smear I wiped away with my wrist. This had to be a joke. Some dumb leftover hazing thing. Zach probably forgot about it. Or maybe he wanted to scare me out of taking his hours. I told myself that as I cracked it open one more time and skimmed through the rules again, line by line, letting the heat of the oven fill the silence. Something knocked near the back door. A soft bump, like a box shifting. I jumped, smacked my elbow on the edge of the table, and cursed under my breath. The sound stopped. Just the old building settling, I told myself. Probably just the wind rattling the dumpster gate again. I looked back at the notebook. My eyes fell on Rule 1 again. Burn 1 pizza every night. My stomach growled. Real food, not burnt. But I couldn't shake the feeling that if I didn't do it, I'd be breaking some promise I didn't remember making. I turned, grabbed a fresh crust from the dough tray, and slapped it down on the table. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to follow at least the first rule. Just to be safe. I pressed the dough flat on the floured counter, watching the flour puff up in little clouds that stuck to my shirt. My hands were shaking a bit. I kept telling myself it was just nerves, just first-night jitters. The oven hummed behind me, louder now that the store was empty. The front windows showed nothing but the dark parking lot and the glowing reflection of the open sign. Out there, a couple of stray shopping carts knocked against each other whenever the wind gusted past the strip mall. I grabbed a ladle of sauce and spread it out. It looked too red under the bright lights, like it was shining. I didn't even care about the toppings. I just grabbed whatever was on the line. A handful of limp pepperoni, a few sad mushrooms, and a pinch of cheese that stuck to my fingers. I slid the pizza onto the paddle and fed it into the oven. The old metal door squealed when I tapped it shut. I turned the temperature knob up until the little red light glowed hot enough to make my eyes water. For a minute, I just stood there, leaning on the counter, listening to the low hum of the oven fan and the soft hiss of the crust starting to blacken. I wiped sweat off my forehead with the back of my wrist. The whole kitchen smelled like a campfire and old grease. When the timer beeped, it made me jump so hard, I knocked a stack of clean pizza boxes onto the floor. I cursed under my breath and bent down to pick them up. When I straightened, the smell hit me full force. The edges of the pizza were curled up like burnt paper. The cheese had turned into a bubbling black blister that popped when I poked it with the tip of the paddle. I gagged a little. The burnt crust crumbled when I slid it off the hot rack. A line of black flakes fell onto the clean floor tiles. Rule 5. Sweep every crumb. I'd get to that. The notebook sat open next to the register, its pages fluttering just a little in the heat that rolled off the oven door. The hum in the walls felt different now, thicker, like the air was crowded with something waiting. I grabbed the paddle with both hands and pushed the burnt pizza deeper inside the oven. I could feel the heat bite my knuckles even through the mitt. I shoved it all the way to the back, right where the burner glowed red and angry. When I closed the oven door, the latch clicked into place with a sound that made my shoulders tense. The notebook's page caught my eye again. Do not open the oven again until morning. I stepped back, wiped my hands on my apron, and looked around like I was expecting to see someone clap for me. But the store was empty. The open sign buzzed. The lights above the prep table flickered once, then steadied. I grabbed the rag from the sink and started wiping down the counter just to keep my hands busy. The burnt smell clung to my hair, sharp and metallic. I kept glancing at the oven door every few seconds, half expecting it to pop open and spit that ruined pizza back at me. That was when I heard it. 2 sharp taps, light but clear, on the glass door at the front. My hand froze on the counter. The rag dropped to the floor. The knock came again. 2 taps, exactly like the notebook had described. The heat from the oven wasn't the only thing making the back of my neck feel hot now. My skin prickled under the collar of my uniform. I looked at the door. The shape outside didn't move. Just a tall, thin shadow under the flickering sign. I remembered the second rule before I even turned to look for the notebook again. Never feed the knocker. My breath stuck in my chest like I'd swallowed something too big to go down. The knocking stopped for a second, then 2 taps again, sharp, patient, hungry. I backed away from the counter, slow, careful not to make any noise. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. I dropped to a crouch behind the pizza racks, trying to hide my face. I squeezed my eyes shut and told myself not to breathe so loud. Somewhere behind the glass, the knocker waited, and I hadn't even swept up the crumbs yet. I stayed crouched behind the pizza racks, trying to fold myself into the shadows. The metal shelf pressed cold against my shoulder. I could still see the glass door if I leaned just enough to peek through the stacks of folded boxes. It was still there. The knocker. Or whatever it really was. Thin, pale, standing under the buzzing halo of the open sign like he belonged there. His face was washed out by the neon glow. His eyes looked like they were sunk too deep. 2 dark bruises punched into a ghost-white face. He lifted his hand again. 2 knuckles tapped the glass. Tap, tap. I flinched so hard I hit my elbow on the rack behind me. The metal clanged. His head twitched like he'd heard it. I ducked lower, pressing my forehead to my knees, breathing through my teeth so I wouldn't make a sound. My brain kept repeating it. Never feed the knocker. Don't answer. Don't open the door. Don't speak. But he could see me. He knew I was there. My own breath sounded too loud, rattling in my ears. I risked another glance. He hadn't moved an inch. His thin hand hovered near the glass, fingers twitching like they wanted to knock again but were waiting for me to look first. I thought about crawling to the back door. Maybe I could slip out, run to the dumpster fence, climb over, cut across the lot to the gas station on the corner. But my keys were still in my pocket, weren't they? I patted my hip. Felt the outline. Good. I just had to wait him out. The knocker's hand dropped to his side. He tilted his head. His eyes, or the empty places where his eyes should have been, shifted left, then right, then back to the door like he was looking for something. Or someone else. Tap, tap. The sound crawled down my spine. I squeezed my eyes shut again, counted to 10 in my head. When I opened them, he was gone. I waited, listening for footsteps, a voice, the click of the door, anything. But there was nothing, just the buzzing open sign, the quiet hum of the freezers, and the low, steady heat from the oven behind me. I pushed myself up slowly, every muscle in my legs shaky. I stood by the counter for a second, trying to breathe normally. My reflection in the window looked pale and sweaty. I wiped my palms on my apron, checked the lock on the door twice, then flipped the latch for good measure. He was gone. Maybe he'd never been real in the first place. Maybe I was tired. Or maybe Zach really did set me up with some sick prank. told one of his burnout friends to knock on the glass just to see if I'd pee myself on my first shift. I glanced at the notebook on the prep table. The page was still open to Rule 2. The words looked darker now, like they'd sunk deeper into the paper while I was hiding. I told myself it was nothing, just a drunk, just a shadow. I had worse things to worry about. Like the trail of black crumbs I'd left by the oven and the corners of the floor near the sink that I hadn't even touched with the broom yet. I grabbed the rag again, started wiping the counter for the 5th time. My eyes flicked to the door every few seconds. The glass stayed empty. The parking lot stayed dark. Behind me, the oven ticked and hissed. The smell of burnt dough clung to my hair, my sleeves, everything. It wasn't even midnight yet. I still had time to sweep. I still had time to finish the list. I told myself I'd be fine if I just followed the rules. But the echo of those 2 knocks kept bouncing around my head, like they were still waiting on the other side of the glass for me to forget. I thought the knocker was the worst of it. I really did. I told myself if I stayed behind the counter and kept my head down, maybe he wouldn't come back. Maybe he was just some messed up prank, something to scare the new kid so Zach could get a laugh when he checked the cameras tomorrow. I kept wiping down the same stretch of stainless steel until my wrist hurt. Every few seconds, I glanced at the glass door. The sign still buzzed above it, casting my reflection back at me. I looked pale and jumpy. My eyes flicked toward the clock, almost 11:45. 15 minutes until I could lock up and run for the bus stop at the far end of the lot. I still had to sweep. I still hadn't touched the crumbs scattered around the oven. I knew Rule 5 was waiting, but I told myself I'd do it as soon as I finished wiping down the prep table one last time. That was when the door chime rang. The sound cut right through me, sharp and too loud in the empty store. I spun around so fast, I nearly knocked over the open sauce tub on the warmer. She stood just inside the doorway, letting the door drift shut behind her. A woman, maybe 30, maybe older, hard to tell because her hair hung in long wet strings that clung to her cheeks like she just stepped out of a shower that never got warm enough. Her clothes didn't match her hair at all, spotless, pressed, not a single wrinkle or watermark. They glowed under the harsh fluorescent lights, so bright they looked fake. I tried to clear my throat, but my voice still cracked. "Hey, sorry, we're about to close." She smiled at me. Her lips were too thin, stretched too wide. Her teeth looked small, even like they'd been shaved flat. "About to close," she said, her voice light and empty. I felt it before I remembered the rule. My skin crawled under my collar. Beware the echo order. I gripped the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles popped. "We're not taking any more orders tonight. Sorry." Her smile didn't fade. If anything, it got wider. She tilted her head just a bit, the wet strands of her hair sliding over her cheek. "Not taking any more orders tonight," she echoed, same tone, same flatness. My heart thudded so loud I couldn't hear the hum of the oven anymore. I stepped back. The rag slipped from my hand and hit the tile with a soft slap. "You should leave," I said. My voice sounded too small, too polite. Her head tilted the other way, like a curious dog. Her grin stayed frozen. She didn't blink. "You should leave," she said right back at me, her voice threading through the words like she was trying them on for size. I felt the sweat bead on my forehead, slide down my temple. I took another step back. She stepped forward at the same time, smooth and slow. Her feet didn't squeak on the tile. They didn't make any sound at all. I reached for the broom, leaning by the cooler. My fingers curled around the handle. She took another step, the wet ends of her hair tapping against her collarbone. "Lady," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "you need to leave." Her grin cracked wider. Her lips didn't stretch enough for teeth to show, just too wide, too thin, too dry. Her eyes flicked to my hand on the broom. "You need to leave. You need to leave." She took another step. I took one back. The corner of the prep table dug into my hip. I slid along it, keeping the broom between us. She mirrored every move, gliding closer, repeating that same line in the same empty voice. I felt my back hit the storage closet door. My free hand fumbled behind me, found the knob. I yanked it open, stepped inside, slammed it shut so hard the mop bucket rattled against the wall. I pressed my ear to the wood. Nothing. No footsteps. No door chime. No voice. Just the thump of my own heart in my ears and the low rumble of the oven leaking through the walls. I waited, maybe 30 seconds, maybe a whole minute. I forced myself to open the door again, pushing it with the broom handle first, like she might be standing right on the other side. She wasn't there. The store was empty. The sauce tubs were still stacked by the prep line. The open sign buzzed like a lazy fly. The floor tiles were dry, no wet footprints, no trail, nothing to prove she'd ever been there, except for the echo of my own voice crawling back down my throat. I let go of the broom, wiping my palms on my apron. I checked the clock again, 11:53. I still had to sweep the crumbs. I still had to get out before midnight. But the air felt thicker now, like her wet hair had left something behind, dripping into the corners where the lights didn't reach. And I still had that last knock rattling in my head, waiting for the next sound. I didn't step far from the supply closet for a while. I just stood there, broom in one hand, eyes locked on the empty front of the store. The air felt thick, like the vents were pumping out steam instead of cold air. My shirt stuck to my back. I could feel the leftover heat from the oven pressing against my spine every time I turned to check the prep line. When I finally made myself move, I forced my feet to shuffle back to the oven. The burnt smell hit me right away. Stale, greasy, almost sweet in a way that made my stomach twist. I peered through the little glass window in the oven door, but it was too dark to see the pizza I'd shoved all the way to the back. The latch on the door looked normal, just a dull strip of metal with a faint rattle when the fan inside kicked on. I wiped sweat off my temple and glanced at the clock by the register. 11:59. One more minute. Then I could scrub the last crumb and run for the door. I pictured myself locking up, keys in hand, jogging to the bus stop under the sad orange glow of the street lamps. Just a few more minutes, and I'd be done. That's when the phone rang. The shrill tone cut through the kitchen so fast I nearly dropped the broom. I snapped my head toward the counter, where the ancient landline sat next to the register. The caller ID screen glowed green in the dark kitchen. It shouldn't have glowed that bright, but maybe my eyes were just tired. I didn't move at first. The rules flashed through my head in the same order I'd read them 100 times already. Rule 6. Never answer the phone after the burn. I set the broom against the wall, let it stand there like it could hold the rule for me. The phone rang again. I counted the rings. 1, 2, 3, 4. The caller ID flickered once before the 5th ring. Mom. My throat went dry. My finger twitched. I hadn't called her. She didn't even know I'd be alone tonight. I told myself the ancient computer in the office must have glitched. Maybe the phone lines crossed with some other shift manager calling his mom for a ride. I told myself anything but the truth that pressed under my ribs. It rang again. I grabbed the receiver without meaning to. My thumb hovered over the answer button. My brain screamed to stop, but my hand didn't care. I pressed it. Hello? Nothing at first. Just static. The soft hiss of dead air, like when you tune a radio just past the edge of the station. Then a voice. Soft. Familiar. Honey? Are you there? My knees almost gave out. I leaned hard against the counter trying to swallow the lump in my throat. Mom? Her voice got clearer like she just stepped closer to the phone on her end. It's cold out here, sweetheart. Can you open the oven? Just a crack? I felt my skin crawl from my neck all the way down my arms. I squeezed the phone so hard my knuckles cracked. Mom? What? A pause. I heard something behind her voice, like the rush of wind through dry leaves, or whispers, or maybe just the kitchen fan rattling behind me. Please, honey, just a crack. It's so cold out here, let me in. Something clattered by the sink, metal on metal, maybe a stray pan shifting where I'd left it to dry. I jerked my head toward the sound, but the sink was empty. Her voice came back sharper this time. Open the oven. Just a little. I'm so cold. I slammed the phone back into the cradle so fast it bounced once before settling. My breath came out in little gasps. I pressed my palms to the edge of the prep table, trying to ground myself so I wouldn't run screaming through the front door. The store felt bigger now, like the corners stretched out wider when I wasn't looking. The shadows under the counter felt deeper. The oven hummed behind me, that steady low drone that sounded almost like breathing. I checked the clock again. 12:02. I was late. I hadn't swept the crumbs yet. I hadn't locked the door. The broom lay on its side near the cooler, knocked over when I spun to look at the phone. I turned in a slow circle, My eyes landed on the footprints first, oily, smudged, leading from the front door to the oven. Bare feet, long toes pressed into the grease stains like they'd melted into the tile. They weren't mine. I knew that before I even bent down to check. I could feel the heat rolling off the oven door like it was alive. The latch rattled once, soft and careful, like it knew I was listening. I grabbed the broom and forced my shaking hands to start sweeping. I pushed the broom across the floor, but my eyes kept drifting to the greasy footprints. They cut across the white tile in a jagged line from the door all the way to the oven. Some of the prints were half there, like whoever left them dragged a foot behind. Or maybe they were just melting into the tile the longer I stared. I swept every crumb I could see. Under the prep table, around the sink legs, behind the cooler, the burnt flakes from the pizza stuck to the bristles like they didn't want to come up. I scraped the broom back and forth until the handle rattled in my grip. The hum of the oven behind me never stopped. When I looked up at the clock, my chest squeezed tight. 12:03. Past midnight. Past the line I wasn't supposed to cross. Rule 7. Never stay alone past midnight. I was still here. I was alone. My hands felt cold on the broom handle. I propped it against the wall, he wiped my palms on my apron, and stepped to the back door. I patted my pocket for the keys, ready to shove them into the latch, bolt for the bus stop, forget every stupid rule in that stupid notebook. My pocket was empty. I turned it inside out, lint, a gum wrapper, no keys. I checked the prep table, the counters, the rack by the register. Nothing. The oven hissed behind me. The latch clacked once, a soft, metallic tick that sounded too deliberate to be just the fan. I glanced back and caught the reflection of my own face in the little oven window. For a second, I thought I saw something else behind the glass. Something shifting, pressing against the heat-fogged surface. I spun back to the door. I gripped the push bar so tight my fingers went numb. I shoved my shoulder into it once, twice, 3 times. The metal rattled, but the lock wouldn't budge. It felt welded shut. My breath came out in sharp, shallow huffs. I turned and scanned the kitchen for something heavy enough to break the latch. The mop bucket, the sauce tub, anything. But the second I stepped away from the door, the oven made another sound. A low scrape, like a hinge turning where no hinge should be. The notebook still sat on the prep table, its pages fluttering in the warm draft. I could see from where I stood that it was open to the last rule. The ink looked darker than before, like it had sunk deeper into the paper, the same way the footprints sunk into the floor. I took a step closer. The pages flipped on their own, one after another, the corners lifting like someone was turning them with invisible fingers. The hum of the oven got louder. It wasn't a hum anymore. It was breathing. I looked at the footprints again. They were thicker now. Fresh grease seeping out where there hadn't been any before. They pulsed like blisters on the tile, oozing toward my shoes. I stumbled back, bumping into the counter so hard a stack of empty boxes fell off and scattered across the floor. The noise didn't matter. No one was here to hear it but me, and whatever waited behind that oven door. I grabbed the closest thing I could reach, a metal pizza paddle. I held it in front of me like a shield, arms shaking so bad the blade rattled against the prep table edge. The latch on the oven clicked again. The door shifted forward a hair, just enough for a line of heat to spill out across the kitchen floor. It smelled worse than before, not just burnt cheese, but something sour and greasy, like old dough left too long in a warm bin. I could hear it now, under the hum, a voice. Not someone else's. Mine. My own voice whispering the rules back to me in the wrong order, backwards, like a tape spinning the wrong way. Stay alone. Stay alone. Pick up the phone. Feed the knocker. Open the oven. I backed into the wall near the back door, clutching the paddle to my chest. The knob wouldn't turn. My keys were still gone. The footprints were closer now, the grease glistening like it was alive, squirming across the tiles one sticky inch at a time. I pressed my forehead against the cold metal door and squeezed my eyes shut. I could feel the heat rolling up behind me, reaching for my back like a hand about to tap my shoulder. I was past midnight. I was alone, and the oven was breathing my name. I pressed my back to the cold metal door, so hard it felt like my spine would snap in half. The pizza paddle dug into my chest. The handle was slick with sweat. I could still hear my own voice echoing from the oven, soft at first, but growing louder each time it repeated the rules I'd already broken. The footprints stretched across the floor in a crooked line of greasy stains, connecting the front door to the oven, and then curving right toward where I stood. They weren't flat anymore. They bubbled at the edges like dough rising in a too-hot pan. I watched one of them shiver and split, a fresh line of oil creeping across the white tile toward my shoe. The latch on the oven clacked open all the way. The door didn't swing wide. It just eased forward a few inches, enough to spill heat across the kitchen like a wave. I could smell it in the back of my throat. Burnt cheese, charred crust, something under that I didn't want to name. The notebook on the prep table fluttered again, pages snapping back until they landed open on the last page. I could see the words from where I stood. "Thank you for feeding us." I tried the back door again, shoulder jammed into the push bar until my teeth rattled. The latch didn't budge. I slammed the pizza paddle against it twice, 3 times, metal clanging against metal like a bell that didn't matter to anyone but me. The heat from the oven made my eyes water. My sleeve stuck to my arms. I heard it then, something shifting inside the oven. Heavy. Wet. A slick scraping sound like raw dough dragging against hot metal. I lifted the paddle like it would help, but my arms felt like they belonged to someone else. A voice drifted out through the crack in the oven door. My voice, but wrong. Too soft, stretched thin like old tape played too slow. "Come here. You forgot to feed us." I felt something wrap around my ankle, warm, doughy, burning hot. I jerked my leg back, but it held tight, like half-cooked dough stuck to my skin, pulling me toward the oven. My foot skidded on the greasy tiles. My free hand clawed at the prep table, nails scraping the metal edge until they bent back. I screamed. I didn't care who heard. I kicked at the thing holding my ankle, but it didn't feel solid enough to break. The smell of burnt sauce filled my nose. My eyes stung. My lungs squeezed down to nothing. I reached for the shelf above the sink, anything to grab onto, but the grip on my ankle tightened. It yanked me off my feet so fast the back of my head cracked against the floor. My vision popped with white spots. The metal lip of the oven door yawned wider as I slid backward across the tile. I could feel the heat baking my legs, my back. I dug my fingers into the floor seams, nails peeling up linoleum until they split. The last thing I saw was the flicker of the open sign in the front window, buzzing soft like an insect trapped in a jar. Then the smell of burnt cheese and charred dough swallowed every breath I had left. The heat wrapped around my shoulders, tighter than the uniform I'd never take off again. The oven door closed with a soft hiss, like someone whispering goodnight. If you ever work the night shift at this Domino's, and you find the notebook, read every line. Follow every rule. Burn the pizza. Don't feed the knocker. Don't answer when the phone rings with your mother's voice on the other end. And if you hear knocking on the glass, don't look. Pretend you didn't hear it at all. Because it's always hungry for more.